In a humble village in Chiapas, where the dry earth seemed to mirror the spirit of its inhabitants, lived Dominic, a quiet and hard-working man who found peace in the simple rhythms of farm life. One morning, his neighbor Gasper came running, breathless with news of an abandoned foal near the river, barely able to stand. Upon hearing these words, Dominic felt an inexplicable pull in his heart. Without hesitation, he set aside his tools and walked toward the location. What he found made him pause. A fragile, trembling foal lay by the dusty road, its skin clinging to its bones, its large dark eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and exhaustion. "Poor creature, what have they done to you?" Dominic whispered, approaching slowly to avoid frightening the weakened animal. When he got close enough, the foal attempted to stand but failed, its thin legs giving way beneath it. A cloud of dust rose as it fell back to the ground. Some passers-by stopped to watch, including an elderly man wearing a straw hat who shook his head disapprovingly. "Dominic, that animal is beyond help. It's too weak. Why burden yourself? It will only be another mouth to feed." But Dominic barely heard these words, focused solely on the small being before him. With considerable effort, he lifted the foal, feeling its fragile body trembling in his arms. The animal barely weighed anything, as if it had already surrendered most of its strength to the earth. But Dominic decided that as long as it breathed, there was hope. "I'll take you home, friend," he whispered. "I don't know how much time you have, but while you're with me, you'll want for nothing." The other men exchanged looks of disbelief, but Dominic no longer listened. For him, the foal had ceased to be a burden the moment he decided to rescue it. Now it was a promise, a responsibility he wouldn't abandon. At his humble farm, he placed the foal in the shed on fresh straw. "I'll call you Vita," he murmured with a half-smile, "because that's what you are, life." The name seemed appropriate, a symbol of what he wished for this abandoned creature. Vita represented a second chance, an opportunity that Dominic was determined to offer regardless of the effort required. As weeks turned into months, Vita transformed before everyone's eyes. From a fragile, trembling foal, she grew into a strong and elegant mare with a coat that reflected the care and love of her caregiver. Whenever Dominic looked at Vita, he saw in her a living proof of resilience and will, and in his heart, he felt a mixture of pride and gratitude. Their bond deepened over time, becoming something that transcended ordinary human-animal relationships. Vita developed an almost supernatural ability to sense Dominic's needs and moods, always finding ways to be near him, her large dark eyes constantly attentive, as if his every movement held special meaning for her. Years passed, and their connection only grew stronger. However, Dominic's health began to decline. His once boundless energy faded, and each step became more laborious. His heart, which had beaten strong and steady, now played tricks on him, beating irregularly and leaving him breathless at unexpected moments. One afternoon, while trying to lift a sack of grain, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, a pressure so intense it forced him to drop the sack and lean against a wall. Vita, who was nearby, raised her head, alerted by Dominic's gesture of pain. The mare approached slowly, gently pushing his shoulder with her muzzle as if trying to support him or offer some of her strength. As Dominic's health continued to deteriorate, he reluctantly asked his nephew Andres to help with the farm work. Though Andres was strong and kind-hearted, Vita remained wary of him, always returning to Dominic for comfort, even when he could barely spend more than a few minutes outside the house. Despite his growing weakness, Dominic would make the effort to visit Vita in the corral. Each step cost him tremendous effort, but the joy of seeing his faithful friend gave him the strength to continue. When he arrived, Vita would be waiting as if she knew he would come to see her. She would walk beside him, matching her pace to his slow steps. "You always know when I need to see you, don't you, Vita?" Dominic would whisper softly while stroking her neck. Vita would lower her head and move even closer, breathing slowly as if synchronizing with Dominic's labored breathing. These moments with Vita were like a balm for Dominic, bringing comfort amid his growing frailty. As time progressed, Dominic's strength continued to diminish. His walks to the corral became less frequent, and the days he could spend extended periods with Vita grew increasingly rare. From the window of his small house, he would watch Vita in the corral, grazing quietly or looking toward the house as if waiting for his visit. Sometimes, when Andres left the door open, Vita would approach the porch, cautiously peering in as if wanting to check on her friend. The bond between them seemed to strengthen even as Dominic's body weakened. In his most difficult days, when he could barely rise from bed, Andres would care for Vita in his place. Yet whenever Dominic managed to visit the corral, even if only for a few minutes, Vita would accompany him as if both knew each precious moment together was irreplaceable. One silent and solemn morning, surrounded by his loved ones, Dominic appeared to take his last breath. The house was immersed in heavy silence, broken only by the muffled sobs of family members and the soft murmur of prayers. News spread quickly through the village, and neighbors and friends soon arrived to bid farewell to this simple, kind-hearted man who had touched so many lives. However, Vita sensed something was terribly wrong. From the moment Dominic didn't appear for their morning routine, she became increasingly agitated. She paced back and forth, casting glances toward the house, waiting for him to appear. As hours passed without any sign of him, she began searching every corner of the property, her movements growing more frantic, her eyes reflecting a mixture of confusion and distress. To prevent any disruption during the funeral, the family decided to keep Vita in the stable. But as soon as she felt confined, she began kicking the door, striking the ground forcefully and making sounds of protest. Each blow of her hooves echoed in the air like an expression of her anguish. Yet the family had no choice but to keep her inside, fearing her presence might disturb the solemnity of the farewell. As family and friends gathered in the house's courtyard for the ceremony, Vita's distress became increasingly evident. Her neighs resonated from the stable, and each sound carried a weight of pain and desperation that permeated the atmosphere. Some of those present looked toward the stable with sadness, aware that the mare was suffering as much as they were. Then, in a moment that would forever be etched in the memory of all present, Vita broke free from the stable with unprecedented force. She galloped toward the ceremony site with such determination that the mourners stepped back in fear and confusion. Without hesitation, she approached Dominic's coffin and began striking it with her hoof. The sound of her hoof against the wood was sharp and resonant, leaving everyone in stunned silence. The blows were insistent, almost rhythmic, as if Vita was trying to communicate something. A plea, a demand, a desperate call. When one of the strikes caused the wood to crack slightly, Dominic's sister, filled with a mixture of wonder and fear, approached the coffin. Putting her ear to the crack, she heard something impossible, a faint breath. Dominic was alive. What followed was nothing short of miraculous. Dominic had been in a state of catalepsy, a rare condition where the body appears completely lifeless with breathing so faint it's nearly imperceptible. It was Vita's unwavering connection to him that had sensed the lingering spark of life that everyone else had missed. This extraordinary event transformed not only their lives, but the entire community's understanding of the depth possible in the bond between humans and animals. Their story became a legend in the village, a testament to the power of loyalty and love that transcends all boundaries. Dominic and Vita's connection had proven stronger than death itself, demonstrating that true love and devotion can indeed work miracles. After this miraculous event, life on the farm took on a new dimension. Dominic's recovery became the primary focus of his family, with everyone contributing to his care and rehabilitation. Yet among all his caretakers, none was more devoted than Vita, who seemed to have appointed herself as his personal guardian. Her vigilant presence became a constant source of comfort and strength for Dominic as he slowly regained his health. The first time Dominic was strong enough to venture out to the corral after his near-death experience, Vita approached him with extraordinary gentleness, as if understanding his fragility. She stood perfectly still as he leaned against her, his arms wrapped around her neck in a silent embrace that spoke volumes about their shared journey. The mare's patience and tenderness during his recovery amazed everyone who witnessed it. Word of their extraordinary story spread far beyond the boundaries of their small village in Chiapas. People would travel considerable distances just to witness the remarkable bond between the man and his horse. They would watch in wonder as Vita anticipated Dominic's needs, moving closer when he needed support, standing guard when he rested, and matching her pace perfectly to his as they walked together around the farm. The experience had profoundly changed both Dominic and those around him. He spoke often of the lessons he had learned about love, loyalty, and the mysterious connections that exist between all living beings. He would tell visitors that Vita had taught him more about life and love than any human ever could. The mare's unwavering dedication had shown him that true love transcends all barriers, even the threshold between life and death. During his recovery, Dominic spent countless hours simply sitting in the corral with Vita, sharing quiet moments that needed no words. He would often bring his meals outside just to be near her, and she would graze contentedly beside him, occasionally lifting her head to check on him with those same knowing eyes that had sensed a spark of life when others thought it extinguished. The local veterinarian, who had initially doubted Vita's chances of survival when Dominic first rescued her as a foal, became a frequent visitor to the farm. He would observe their interaction with professional curiosity, noting how their extraordinary bond seemed to contribute to Dominic's healing. The mare's presence appeared to have therapeutic effects, lowering Dominic's blood pressure and bringing a sense of peace that no medicine could provide. As seasons changed and years passed, their story became deeply woven into the fabric of local culture. Parents would bring their children to visit, using their story to teach lessons about compassion, loyalty, and the profound impact of unconditional love. The village schoolteacher even included their tale in her lessons, helping young minds understand that the capacity for love and devotion knows no species barriers. Dominic's nephew Andres, who had initially been skeptical of the deep connection between his uncle and the mare, became one of their story's most passionate advocates. He would often share with visitors how Vita's intervention had not only saved his uncle's life, but had also taught him to look beyond surface appearances and recognize the profound depths of animal consciousness. The farm itself seemed to flourish under the renewed energy of Dominic's recovery and Vita's watchful presence. The crops grew more abundantly. Other animals seemed more content, and visitors often remarked on the special atmosphere of peace that pervaded the property. It was as if the miracle that had occurred there had blessed the very soil beneath their feet. Through the changing seasons, Dominic and Vita maintained their daily rituals. Each morning, they would walk together to watch the sunrise, their silhouettes merging against the brightening sky. Their footprints in the earth, side by side, human and horse, became a symbol of their extraordinary journey together. People would often stop along the road to watch them, moved by the visible manifestation of such pure and unconditional love. As age gradually began to mark both Dominic and Vita, their bond only grew stronger. Their story continued to touch hearts and inspire minds, reminding all who heard it that love, in its purest form, has the power to transcend not only death, but all the artificial boundaries humans create. In their quiet corner of Chiapas, they had become living proof that miracles do happen, and that sometimes they come in the form of a faithful mare who refuses to let go of the one she loves. Their legacy extended far beyond their small community, becoming a testament to the extraordinary possibilities that exist when hearts connect in pure love and devotion. Dominic and Vita's story continues to be told, passed down through generations as a reminder that some bonds are so sacred, so profound, that they can bridge the gap between life and death itself, bringing hope and wonder to all who hear their tale. The story of Dominic and Vita continues to resonate through time, touching hearts and transforming lives in ways they never could have imagined. Their daily routines became sacred moments, watched and admired by those fortunate enough to witness them. Each morning, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, they would emerge from the farm together, their movements perfectly synchronized despite their advancing years. Local artists began capturing their story in paintings and sculptures, trying to immortalize the profound connection between man and mare. One particular artist, moved by their tale, created a series of watercolors depicting key moments in their journey. From the first day Dominic found Vita as a struggling foal, to the miraculous moment she saved his life, to their peaceful walks in their golden years. These artworks found their way into homes throughout the region, serving as daily reminders of the power of unconditional love. The children of the village developed a special fondness for visiting Dominic and Vita. They would gather at the fence of the corral, listening intently as Dominic shared stories of their life together. Vita would stand nearby, her ears pricked forward, seemingly enjoying the retelling of their shared history. The children would bring her carrots and apples, which she would accept with gentle grace, careful never to frighten even the smallest visitor. During festival times, the village would often center their celebrations around the farm, where Dominic and Vita had become living symbols of hope and resilience. People would gather to share meals, tell stories, and witness the continuing miracle of their bond. Young couples would seek their presence, believing that their love story blessed new beginnings with a special kind of magic. As the years progressed, veterinarians and animal behaviorists from various parts of the country began documenting their case, fascinated by the depth of understanding between them. They noted how Vita could sense changes in Dominic's health before any visible symptoms appeared, how she would adjust her behavior to accommodate his needs, and how their emotional connection seemed to defy conventional understanding of human-animal relationships. The farm itself evolved into a kind of informal sanctuary where people would bring injured or abandoned animals, inspired by the story of how Dominic D once saved a dying foal. Under their influence, the community developed a deeper respect for the emotional lives of animals, recognizing that their capacity for love and loyalty often matched or exceeded that of humans. During quiet afternoons, Dominic would often sit in his favorite chair near the corral, reading or simply watching the world go by, while Vita stood nearby, her presence as constant as the mountains on the horizon. Their silence spoke volumes, filled with years of shared experiences, mutual understanding, and unwavering trust. Visitors would often comment on the peaceful atmosphere that surrounded them, as if their bond created a tangible field of tranquility. When storms would roll in from the mountains, Vita's protective instincts would shine through. She would position herself near Dominic, as if ready to shield him from any harm. During one particularly severe thunderstorm, she insisted on staying close to the house, nickering softly whenever lightning illuminated the sky, as if reassuring him of her presence. The influence of their story spread beyond their immediate surroundings. Writers and journalists who visited the farm would leave transformed, carrying with them a new understanding of the depths possible in relationships between species. Their articles and books touched readers around the country, inspiring others to look more deeply at their own connections with animals. Local schools began incorporating their story into their curriculum, using it to teach children about empathy, loyalty, and the importance of caring for all living beings. Students would write essays and create art projects inspired by Dominic and Vita, their young minds grasping intuitively the profound truths embedded in their tale. Community events would often pause when Dominic and Vita made their appearance, conversations quieting as people watched them move together with their characteristic harmony. Young and old alike would smile at the sight of them, their hearts lifted by this living reminder that love knows no boundaries. The nights at the farm held their own special magic. Under star-filled skies, Dominic would sometimes sit outside, sharing his thoughts with Vita as she stood nearby, her dark form silhouetted against the darkness. These quiet moments, witnessed only by the moon and stars, seemed to hold the essence of their extraordinary bond. As seasons continued to change, their profound influence on the community deepened even further. Documentary filmmakers began visiting the farm, hoping to capture the essence of their extraordinary relationship. The quiet moments between Dominic and Vita became precious footage, showing the world how love could transcend the boundaries between species. During harvest times, The entire village would gather at Dominic's farm, not just to help with the crops, but to be in the presence of this remarkable pair. Even as they worked, people would pause to watch as Vita followed Dominic through the fields, her watchful eyes never leaving him. She seemed to understand the rhythm of the harvest, moving carefully between the workers, always maintaining her protective vigil over Dominic. The local medical community began studying the therapeutic effects of their relationship. They noticed that patients who visited the farm often showed remarkable improvements in their physical and emotional well-being. Something about witnessing the pure love between Dominic and Vita seemed to awaken hope in those who were struggling with illness or despair. Their morning walks became a sort of ritual that neighbors would set their watches by. As dawn broke over the mountains, Dominic and Vita would emerge from the farm, moving in perfect synchronization. The early morning light would catch Vita's coat, creating a golden halo around her form as she matched her pace to Dominic's careful steps. These daily journeys, though shorter than in their younger years, carried a dignity and grace that touched all who witnessed them. Traditional healers from the region began incorporating their story into their teachings about the interconnectedness of all living beings. They spoke of how Vita's intuitive understanding of Dominic's life force had transcended the ordinary boundaries between human and animal consciousness, creating a bridge that had literally defeated death. During the rainy season, when thick clouds would gather over the mountains, Vita developed an uncanny ability to predict when Dominic needed to seek shelter. She would gently nudge him toward the house minutes before the heaviest rains began, her instincts finely tuned to protecting his now fragile health. The villagers marveled at these displays of intelligence and devotion, often sharing their own stories of how witnessing this relationship had changed their understanding of love and loyalty. Local artisans began creating traditional textiles featuring patterns inspired by Dominic and Vita's story. Beautiful blankets and shawls emerged from their looms, decorated with symbols representing their journey. A dying foal transformed into a magnificent mare, a man brought back from death's door by the love of his faithful companion. Their daily walks together under the rising sun. The changing seasons brought new challenges as both Dominic and Vita aged, but their bond remained unshakable. During winter nights, when the cold mountain air crept through the valley, Vita would position herself to block the wind from reaching Dominic as he sat on his porch, refusing to move until he went inside. These small acts of devotion continued to amaze those who witnessed them. Their presence began attracting people seeking healing and hope. Families would travel from distant villages, bringing their children to see the living proof that miracles were possible. Dominic would share their story with patience and humility, while Vita stood nearby, her gentle presence adding weight to every word. Many reported feeling a profound sense of peace just being in their presence. The farm itself seemed to exist in a special kind of harmony. Other animals on the property seemed to recognize the unique bond between Dominic and Vita, showing unusual gentleness around them. Birds would often perch nearby as they took their walks, adding their songs to the peaceful atmosphere that surrounded them. On full moon nights, when the valley was bathed in silver light, Dominic would sometimes sit by the corral, softly telling Vita stories of their younger days. She would listen with pricked ears, occasionally touching his shoulder with her soft muzzle, as if acknowledging their shared memories. These moonlit conversations became another chapter in their ever-evolving story, witnessed only by the stars above and the gentle mountain winds. Universities began sending students to study the unique behavioral patterns displayed in their relationship. Researchers noted how Vita had developed an extensive vocabulary of subtle gestures and expressions specifically for communicating with Dominic, while he had learned to read the smallest changes in her body language. Their silent communication demonstrated levels of understanding that challenged conventional theories about human-animal relationships. The research continued to reveal fascinating aspects of their relationship. Behavioral scientists documented how Vita would position herself differently depending on Dominic's daily health conditions, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of his needs. On days when his breathing was more labored, she would stand closer, providing a steady support for him to lean against. When he felt stronger, she would give him more space while maintaining her vigilant watch. Music began to play a special role in their daily routine. Local musicians, inspired by their story, would often gather at the farm to play traditional melodies. They noticed that Vita seemed particularly responsive to certain tunes, especially those with rhythms that matched Dominic's walking pace. These musical sessions became regular events, drawing people from surrounding villages who would sit quietly, watching as Vita swayed gently to the music while staying close to Dominic. The farm's atmosphere continued to evolve into something extraordinary. Visitors often described feeling an inexplicable sense of peace the moment they passed through the gate. The air seemed lighter, colors appeared more vivid, and even the most troubled souls found comfort in watching Dominic and Vita's quiet interactions. The property became known as a place of healing, where the miraculous didn't seem so impossible anymore. During harvest festivals, their story would be retold through traditional dances and performances. Young performers would portray the moment of Vita's rescue, her growth into a strong mare, and the miraculous day she saved Dominic's life. These performances became a cherished part of local culture, passed down through generations as a reminder of love's transformative power. Their influence extended to veterinary practices throughout the region. Veterinarians began paying more attention to the emotional bonds between animals and their caregivers, recognizing how these connections could affect healing and recovery. Some started recommending that owners spend more time simply being present with their animals, inspired by the hours Dominic and Vita spent in quiet companionship. The changing seasons brought new dimensions to their relationship. During spring rains, Vita would carefully guide Dominic along the safest paths, seeming to know exactly where the ground was most stable. In summer heat, she would position herself to create shade for him as he rested. Autumn winds would find them walking together through falling leaves, their movements so synchronized they appeared to dance. Winter's chill brought them even closer, sharing warmth through their proximity. Photographers who visited the farm often spoke of the challenge in capturing the true essence of their bond. The most striking images weren't of dramatic moments, but of quiet ones. Dominic reading while Vita grazed nearby, both bathed in golden afternoon light, or the way they would watch sunsets together, their silhouettes merging against the colorful sky. Their daily routine became a kind of meditation for those who observed it. Each morning, they would begin with a slow walk to check the farm's boundaries. Vita would stop at precisely the right moments, knowing when Dominic needed to catch his breath. They would pause to watch the sun rise together, standing in comfortable silence as the world awakened around them. These simple moments carried a profound beauty that touched everyone who witnessed them. Local children began creating their own stories inspired by Dominic and Vita. They would gather under the old oak tree near the corral, sharing tales of magical horses and the humans who loved them. Vita would often listen to these storytelling sessions, her ears moving back and forth as if following the narrative, while Dominic sat nearby, smiling at the children's imagination. The farm became a sanctuary for injured or abandoned animals, as people remembered how Vita had once been a dying foal herself. Each new arrival seemed to sense the special nature of the place, finding comfort in the peaceful atmosphere that Dominic and Vita had created. The other animals appeared to gravitate toward Vita, as if recognizing her as a kind of spiritual guardian of the farm.